we have some things to talk about.
Stop chasing all the city lights. Breathe me in, go on and take your bite. Count.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's gonna be a little bit of a rough intro because it's been a minute. I have had my son and it has been almost 13 weeks. Well, it'll be 13 weeks Monday since I have had him, and a lot has happened since then with releases, my own writing journey, being a new mom journey, adjusting to everything as a new mom. So it has been an intense learning curve, and coffee has saved me this entire time. So today I wanted to just chat with you guys about what happened, why I have been so absent, because he came early. I expected him to come a week early. I did not expect him to come 2 weeks early. So things got a little bit thrown off, and I love this shirt that I got at TJ Maxx. It's like the perfect shirt. So, and obviously I am not pregnant anymore. Woo! So, yeah, we are doing a lot better than we were. So for starters, I will say this video for some things might be TMI, but it's not TMI because it's basically talking scientific talk about what happens during labor and delivery. So if you don't want to hear that, I'll see you in my next video. So there are the people who are just curious about what happened, how my water broke in epic proportions, and subsequently what happened going forward. So I was originally due March 30th, and I had my Kanban board all set up. I had my writing schedule set up. I was doing really well. I was getting very sore. Last 2 months during my pregnancy, my pelvic floor really got painful, and just my pelvis cracked and literally snapped when I would roll over in my sleep, and it would hurt. And it was just extremely painful. I couldn't walk anymore. I was going for walks for my exercise to stay in shape. Couldn't do that anymore without putting myself into Braxton Hicks contractions, and pretty good ones at that. So I really pretty much had to stop all activity minus just walking around the house and doing a couple of laps every, getting up and moving every hour or so, 45 minutes to an hour, which really sucked because I had been pretty active throughout my whole pregnancy, including moving to a new apartment. From there, March 13th rolled around, and that was a Saturday. The Friday, the 12th, I started to notice that I had lost a little bit of my mucus plug. And for those of you who don't know, mucus plug is what is in your uterus to kind of keep bacteria out of that area. And it's like a plug. It's literally a mucus plug, and it can be clear and like egg yolky looking, or it could come out with your bloody show, which mine just came out looking like egg yolky. So I was like, that's interesting. Told my sister about it, and she's like, oh, that's common. You could lose it up to like a couple of weeks to a month before you give birth. So I was like, okay, cool. I have 2 more weeks. So he's probably gonna come a week early, but I have time. And then Saturday came around, the 13th, and I lost more of it. And I called my doctor and got doctor on call, and they were like, yeah, you could lose it. Just keep an eye on it. No big deal. And that night I had a Jackbox party online since COVID social distancing. And I was laughing a lot. And I joked with my friend whose birthday was on Monday the 15th. Hey, if my water breaks, I'm blaming it on you because I've been laughing so hard. And we all had a good giggle about it. And then Sunday the 14th rolled around, and I was having Braxton Hicks contractions on and off all weekend. And then Sunday I lost even more of the plug. So it was coming out. It doesn't all come out at once. It can come out in like chunks. And I was thinking to myself, this is I have a feeling. So I got my husband and I said, hey, we have to go to the Walmart and get the adult diapers for postpartum. So after I come home, you can wear the always discreet adult disposable diapers for recovery because you bleed a lot and it's pain. And it's just nice to have, something comfortable, and they are so comfortable. This is not sponsored, but Always Depends discreets are so comfortable. I highly suggest them for anybody postpartum or anything like that. Like, seriously, get you some Always discreets. I got that. I got some little knick-knacky things that I would need in the hospital, and pretty much finished packing my bag that day with everything other than the last minute essentials like hairbrush and blow dryer. And I packed a whole bunch of stuff. I packed like cute pajamas, I packed slippers, I packed, cute socks, I packed makeup, I packed clothes, and obviously going home outfit. And then we packed up his diaper bag, my son's diaper bag, with clothes as well. I will do a whole entire video of things you do not need to bring and you will not use. And I'll get into that. So that night, on Sunday night, I started timing my contractions because I thought they were Braxton Hicks, but just to be on the safe side, I started to time them. And they were coming everywhere from 12 to 13, but they weren't painful yet. So I went to bed at about 11 o'clock that night. My husband was like, hey, do you mind if I take a sleep aid tonight? Because he has trouble sleeping. And he has a prescription for sometimes, sleep aids. Sometimes if it's a hard night for him to go to sleep and he wants a really good sleep, he'll just take a sleep aid. I said, sure. I don't think, sure, fine. Famous last words. At about 11:30, I woke up with a really strong contraction, and I was like, ooh, that felt really different. It was like really low in my pelvic area, and I was like suspicious. And then I went back to sleep, and I woke up at 12:44 or 43 a.m. on the morning of the 15th. And I had 2 of those really intense contractions, really deep, really low, back to back, within 3 minutes of each other. And so I sat up. And when I sat up, I felt an internal pop. Heard kind of like an internal pop. It's really hard to describe unless you go through it, but when you feel something like in your body and you can hear it within your body. That's kind of what it sounded and felt like. And I felt a trickle, and I was like, did I just pee myself? So I ran to the bathroom because I'm embarrassed. I don't want to wet the bed. And the moment I sat down, it was like movie-esque gush. Like, holy crap. Oh my gosh. My water just freaking broke. Like the Hoover Dam. And I remember sitting there in shock and looking at my closet, which is right across from me. Like, we have like this little cabinetry thing in our bathroom, and thinking, thank God I bought the Depends now, like the adult underwear to wear, the disposables, because I'm gonna need to wear those to the hospital. And I just remember going, babe, it's happening. My water broke. And of course, my husband is sadly only about 2.5 hours in to sleep with a sleep aid. And he's like waking up, like, what is happening? I don't even know what's going on. I said, my water just broke. And he was like, oh. So at 12:45, my water broke, and I got myself, I sat in the toilet for a little bit, because it's like, when there's a couple ways waters break. It can trickle, it can drip. Oh no, mine was just like, and it continued to come. So put on the adult diaper, and luckily we were majority packed. We had the car seat ready to go by the front door. We already had it like bolted into the back seat of our car. So the only thing we had to do was, load the cats up on food, let our neighbors know who are taking care of our cats, hey, we're going now. So we loaded them up on food and water, and we cleaned the litter box really quickly because we have a pellet system, so it's super easy to clean. And we loaded up the car. I called both of the sets of parents and texted my sister, and we went. And we got to the hospital within 10 minutes. I had one in-car contraction, which was not really that bad. What made it worse was being in an uncomfortable bucket seat. So being in an actual like car seat, sitting in the car made it uncomfortable because it was just felt weird on the lower half. And then every time you go over bumps, when your water has broken, more water comes out. We get to the hospital. Check-in was super easy. I called ahead. They knew I was coming. It was spring break weekend, so apparently the labor and delivery ward was pretty quiet. I mean, it had people, but it was pretty quiet. And I got into my L&D room and was, hooked up pretty quickly to the IV for the saline solution and to start penicillin because I was strep B positive. So they had to start me on penicillin, and it was like boom, boom, boom. By the time 1:30, 2 o'clock rolled around, we were settled in. I was 1 centimeter dilated and 50% effaced. So we had some work to do. And because my water had already broken, I was strep B positive, they wanted to start Pitocin, but they were going to let me try for a few hours to get as far as I could. So we worked through until about 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I think by 7, I was like, okay, I'm only 3 centimeters dilated and like 80% effaced. We need to move this along because they said they wanted to have the baby within 15 to 20 hours. Again, since my water had already broken. And baby was doing great. Baby was doing fine. Baby did not like being on a yoga ball at first. I had done all of my practicing and kind of class things on a yoga ball. So my husband was doing counter pressure on in the bed, and I had a peanut ball between my legs, and it was just a little bit. The birth plan was to labor at home as long as possible on the yoga ball with counter pressure and breathing and soft music, and all of that went out the window because you were in the hospital. And eventually we were able to move back to the yoga ball after a couple of hours of just getting his heart rate under control. And it wasn't really bad. It was just like dipping when I was sitting up. And so they had to give me a special saline solution with like sugar in it because he kept wanting to fall asleep. So they needed him to be awake or moving more. So once I got on the yoga ball, they gave my husband these awesome little ice packs. I call them ice packs, but they were hot packs. They break. And between that and the counter pressure, I got to about on a pain threshold, about 7 to 8 out of 10. And the contractions really felt like really quick, painful period cramps. Now I did get an epidural at 3.5 centimeters because they wanted to start me on Pitocin, and I did not want to go through those Pitocin contractions without an epidural. So I don't know how far I could have gone. All I knew was I did not want Pitocin contractions. So I said, let's get the epidural now. And then way I can take the Pitocin, no problem. And the nurse was like, great. They kept asking me too. They were like, do you want your epidural now? Do you want your epidural now? And I was like, wow, usually this doesn't happen. Like they really want to give me my epidural. So the guy came in to give me my epidural. My anesthesiologist was a really young guy, but really skilled. Like I felt zero pain. My husband watched the entire thing. He was fascinated by it. And I was super nervous. Like I was having a panic attack on my nurse. Like my nurse was 5 weeks about to give birth herself. And she was amazing. And she was like, you can hug me if you want. It's okay. I've had one of these. It's no big deal. You're going to feel like maybe a zing down your leg, and that's going to be it. And I did. I felt like a zing down my left leg, and it was over. Minus the lidocaine. They numb your outside area first, which feels like a bee sting, but it's like Novocaine for your back. If you've ever had like minor surgery or like skin graft removal or stitches or anything like that on your like exterior skin, it's pretty much what they give you to numb the area. So I was totally used to that. It was no big deal for me. It was the huge needle catheter with a hole in it that looks like it should be, punching a hole in your belly button. That kind of unnerved me a little bit, but I didn't see that part. My husband again watched all of it and thought it was fascinating, and then into the catheter and hooked me up, and I did get the epidural shakes. Those are fun. Sometimes, majority of the time, I've heard that you can shake with the epidural, just the medicine. And I did get those, and they gave me the button, and I think I had to push the button about a total of 3 times, because towards the end of the labor, I got like a hot spot right like on my right side by my hip, and they positioned me in a certain way, and I hit the button again, and it got rid of it. So that was good, because it was starting to really hurt, and I was like, oh, this one area hurts this bad. I'm so glad I got the epidural. So from the epidural at 8 a.m. till 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., 10 a.m., about 12 or 1, I went from a 3 to a 7. So we made super progress, and my contractions were getting super strong. And in this time period, my husband and I were napping, we were chatting with the nurses, we were talking to family. It was really laid back. There was a lot of laughing, which was fantastic, and had a really, really, really great experience. When I got to my last centimeter to dilate to 10, they said that my cervix was a little bit swollen, because he was like, here's my cervix and here's my son's head, and he's kind of like hitting here. So he wasn't coming down through, because I'm so narrow. He had to they had to position me, because he was also, they found out, sunny side. So that means that his head was back to my spine, or it should be the opposite way. So we were essentially back to back. And that's why I was having so much back labor, like lower back pain. When I wasn't on the yoga ball, that's where all my contractions were. But when I was upright, it was kind of distributed evenly. So that was fun. And there's an even more fun fact about that postpartum that I'm still dealing with. So he was really heavy on the back, and my cervix was a little bit swollen. So they were like, we might have to give you a little bit of medicine in there to kind of like ease the swelling, but we're going to take this next hour, labor down, and have you half an hour on one side with the peanut ball, half an hour on the other side of the peanut ball, in this position called the flying cowgirl, which sounded like a sex position to me, but I was like, okay, that's fine. It was this really awkward position, which ended up me having to push the button, because it moved the epidural, like how you lay and how it distributes. So that was pretty intense. And he finally came down, and she checked. She's like, okay, he's right there. So then we started practice pushing, and pushing takes a long time. And it doesn't take a long time when you're pushing, because you push, your contraction maybe lasts a minute, and you get 3, maybe 4 really good chances to push for 10 seconds. So if you think about it, your contractions are 3 to 5 minutes apart at this point, depending on, so there's a lot of waiting involved. So total time actually pushing, I only pushed for about half an hour. Total time waiting to push and being, in that moment was like an hour and 15 or something like that. But the majority of the time pushing, it was only about a half an hour. And he moved down real fast. I moved him really quick. I was like, this is not a drill. This is not a game. It's been about 14 and a half, 15 hours at this point. I want you out. So I did a really well pushing, and my husband was watching the entire thing. We were laughing through the entire thing. My husband was such an amazing support. He had me laughing through some pushes that I had to tell him, stop, I can't concentrate on pushing. You're making me laugh so hard. And our nurse just thought he was the best. And it was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience. And then when it was time for the doctor to come in, literally I pushed for, the doctor was only there for like maximum 5 minutes before I pushed the baby out. She came in, made some jokes, got some info, sat down, pushed. My heart rate was my blood pressure was a little bit high, because I was having like mini panic attacks throughout the entire ordeal. Like, I have super high anxiety and super bad anxiety, which I'll get into in another video about postpartum. But with me in the postpartum, they thought I had high blood pressure. They were worried about preeclampsia or postclampsia, but it never came to fruition for anything. I wasn't having any other symptoms. My blood work came back clean. They did 2 rounds of blood work on me after, directly during delivery and directly after. So they were checking me to make sure that it wasn't going the wrong way, and nothing showed up. It was just high blood pressure. And I'm like, I'm nervous. I'm about to push a human out of the smallest hole in my body. Like, this is intense. This is crazy. And I've had a guy stick a rod in my back and in my spine. I've given somebody permission to, paralyze me. I'm a little bit nervous. Plus, as common and as normal as labor and delivery is for women daily, it is still a very dangerous undertaking. So it's like you're in the back of your mind going, at any point, something could go wrong with either you or the baby. So I was like, you're in it and you're thinking about all of these things. And you have your husband there and you're like, oh my gosh, what if something happened to me and then he was left with the baby? Or what if something happens to both of us and he's left, horrible things go through your mind. Well, went through my mind. It might not go through everybody's mind. I was excited to meet my son and I was anticipating that, but also there's a split second where you're like, this could all go tits up, like real fast. So the doctor sat down, she's like, show me what you got. I did, and pushed him out. And he was here. And it was like crazy fast. He came out and I could see him. He had his eyes open and his mouth was open and he was making gurgling noises, but there was a lot of amniotic fluid that he had swallowed. So my husband got to cut the cord. They had to take him to the baby warmer and get him suctioned out, and then he started crying. It took a while for him to cry. I didn't realize until I watched the video back that it took him a good 30 to 45 seconds to cry. Actual cry. He was making little noises, but they had to work on him to really get the amniotic fluid out. And then the next day he was throwing up a lot of amniotic fluid, which is totally common, but it made sense that he had actually swallowed a lot. So I had a 2nd-degree tear, which, like the doctor, she had me stop pushing and she's like, oh, broad shoulders. I hate broad shoulders. And I go, you're making me want to push so much more, like basically that was my signal, like, oh yeah, you're not getting out of this unscathed. So I had a 2nd-degree tear this way on my perineum, which is the place between your vagina and your butt. So I had like a 2nd-degree tear and she had to stitch me back up. And then when she was pulling the cord to deliver the placenta, she's like, your cord feels a little bit fragile. I don't want to pull it because I don't want to have to go up and in and grab it and pull it out. So I was like, okay, I'll push. So I pushed it like once and it came right out, no problem. And she was like, you did have a marginal cord insertion. So if you guys remember previously in videos on this channel, I talked about how I had to go to a high-risk doctor to get an ultrasound because they thought I had a velamentous cord insertion, which is basically, it's called a VCI. Your cord is inserted into the blood vessels first and not the actual like meat of the placenta. It's just attached to the outside, and at any time it could detach, it could rip away. And usually you have to have a cesarean, be induced 2 weeks, and have a cesarean to avoid hemorrhaging for you or the baby. And if you have an MCI, which is a marginal cord insertion, they do suggest that you are induced 2 weeks early to avoid having a full-term size baby, to put more pressure on the cord or have anything like dire happen in those last 2 weeks. So baby boy coming early was a blessing in disguise because he only weighed 6 pounds 15 ounces, just under 7 pounds, and he was only 19 and a half inches long. So we dodged a bullet there. So that was pretty much it. And it was the best feeling in the world to get him back on my chest. Like, the skin to skin was amazing, and just seeing him and my husband seeing him, and it was just like, I could rest. But you can't really rest in a hospital because the nurses are checking on you. And then comes the fun part that nobody tells you about how directly after giving birth, they start massaging your stomach and pushing on it to kind of encourage your uterus to start contracting to go back down to size. And with an epidural still on, oh my gosh, it's no big deal. It's uncomfortable, but it's no big deal. You just gush blood and amniotic fluid and water and stuff like that. It's gross. But without the epidural, once you're in recovery and they do it, it's a special kind of hell. It's not so bad. Like, it's doable, but you're just like, thanks, nurse. I just had a baby. I'm extremely sore and you're going to push on my uterus. Great. But it has to happen. And I didn't get control of my left leg until the next day. So getting up to go to the bathroom was a no. I went from borderline anemic to anemic after labor and delivery, so I had to be on iron supplements pretty quickly thereafter because I went for, you're supposed to be like at a level 11 for one of your iron numbers. I was at a 10 going in and I fell to an 8 after labor and delivery. So it was like, no wonder I felt so woozy and queasy after delivery. You know, standing up was kind of like, ooh. Plus, I didn't have use of my legs, so I almost took a nurse out with me trying to go to the bathroom. And the first bathroom break was in the bathroom, and the nurse got me all situated and set up with the ice packs. Thank the Lord for those ice packs, and with all of the witch hazel stuff, and it was amazing. And that's when the epidural started to wear off and I realized I am in absolute agony. Not where you would suspect to be in absolute agony. You expect your vagina to be in absolute agony, where you tore to be in absolute agony, your stomach from all the contractions to be in absolute agony. Do you know where I was in absolute agony? My tailbone. Unbeknownst to me, babies can bruise, fracture, or break or dislocate your tailbone during birth. Pretty sure my son either fractured or broke my tailbone because it is almost 13 weeks postpartum today. It still cracks and it still hurts if I sit on hard surfaces for too long. And for about a good 2 weeks, I couldn't move from from a laying down to a sitting upright position without wanting to cry. So I recovered extremely quickly. I recovered extremely well postpartum. The tailbone thing, that was what got me, and that was rough. So I'm trying to, I thought in the hospital that I'm just recovering, that the tailbone thing will go away. It's probably actually, you know, I chalked it up to the spinal. I chalked it up to the epidural. I'm like, I got the spinal aches that you can get after the spinal tap, you know, like after the epidural. That's why my tailbone and my lower back hurt so bad. Nope. It was probably, we're going to go get it checked out here just to get it x-rayed probably shortly and see if I actually did break it. But the joke is around the house that my son broke my butt. So that's one thing that was super fun that I wasn't expecting. And my son ended up having jaundice. So he latched really well. He was super responsive. We absolutely adored him. He was passing meconium really easily. Second day in the hospital, like not the Tuesday after, we were expected to go home Wednesday. They said we'll probably have to keep him an extra day past to Thursday because he was jaundiced and his numbers are really high. And based on our blood type mixing, him being a B positive baby and me being an O positive mom, apparently those blood types don't mix well and you basically get a jaundiced baby. It's pretty common to get a jaundiced baby from that. And he had to be under the bilirubin lights for over 24 hours. And that Wednesday night, they let us courtesy stay in the hospital because I was breastfeeding and he had to be supplemented with formula to help pass the bilirubin out of his system. Like how you get rid of jaundice in babies is have them poop. So we had to feed him formula and breastfeed. So we were alternating depending on how hungry he was every 3 hours. And that was hard because he had to wear these little sunglasses. And the nurse is like, okay, well, I'm going to go. And he can't take these glasses off for too long because if he does, then he can go blind from the lights. So my husband and I took 3-hour shifts watching him, just literally watching him and making sure that he wouldn't rip him off. And let me tell you, at 3 days old, this little bugger was already ripping stuff off. Like they already know how to grab and take off and stuff. So that was really stressful. And then him crying and not being able to pick him up. There was one time where I picked him up and I was like, shut off the lights and give me my kid. So I could cuddle him and make him feel better and do skin to skin and nurse him a little bit to comfort nurse him. And we got home on Thursday, then March 18th, and we had a baby. Walking into the apartment after having a baby was a surreal moment because it always feels like pregnancy always feels like it's going so slow until you hit certain milestones. Like when you hit the second trimester, you're like, oh my gosh, it went by so fast. When you hit the third trimester, it's like, oh, that went by really quick. I didn't even know. And then third trimester gets here and it starts to drag and you don't feel good and you're heavy and you're tired a lot and the fatigue comes back and you're like, man, this is just dragging. But then when it happens, and especially when it happens not according to plan or not super early or even late, you know, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, this is happening. It's go time. And it's intense. And when we came back home, the cats were like, what is that? You know, we left without an extra person. We came back with an extra person. So that is pretty much my labor and delivery story. I felt zero pain. I didn't feel the ring of fire. I felt stretching. I didn't feel any stinging or pain or burning. Like I was ready to feel pain. I was so prepared. I was like, you're going to feel the ring of fire. You're going to feel pain and you're going to push past that pain. And I felt nothing. And that's the first thing I said after he was out. I said, I felt nothing. That was painless. And the doctor was like, the epidural is there for a reason. And I was like, oh, thank God. So I had a pretty much seamless pregnancy, a perfect labor and delivery, a wonderfully easy and quick recovery postpartum minus the tailbone issue. But however, what I did not expect or even think about postpartum was postpartum depression and anxiety, which I will talk about in another video. And I got that horrible, extremely horrible. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But my son is here. He is healthy. He is happy. I am healthy. I am happy now. And my husband is a little bit more sane because we are both happy and healthy now. And he is actually sleeping through the night. So I will leave you guys with that for now. And I will come back and talk about things that they don't tell you in the postpartum process, which I think they really should, but they don't. And I'm going to tell you some things that you're going to go through that they don't tell you. So, one love, you guys.